everybody. Thanks for joining. I am Bree Zabrowski, co-founder and CEO of Apollo Performance, here with my fabulous friend and co-host, Melissa McDaniel Grisham. And we are back for another fantastic episode with our friend Ashley Mowry. Beyond the Steps is a show that we talk about all things impacting performing artists, from racism, gender equity, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition, psychology, dance medicine, science, and more. And today we are talking about one of our favorite topics that Ashley always helps us with, is psychology. It is, how do internal and external validation affect performance athletes? That level, we don't realize the impact that these two things have on us, and external validation specifically. Our background is dance, so I'm excited to dive into this today, and see how we can get a better grip on this and maybe be more conscious of it with our students. So for those that haven't met Ashley before, Melissa, tell our people, our audience, a little bit more about Ashley Mowry.
I am so excited to introduce Ashley, who is a part of our family. She's been on so many times on Beyond the Steps over the past 4 seasons. Ashley is a former competitive dancer, dance educator, and competition company director. Now, as a mindset coach, an amazing mindset coach, she helps dancers build a healthy mindset so that they can shine on and off the stage. Ashley works with dancers one-on-one, with virtual coaching, as well as with studios and teams and workshops. She holds a BA in psychology from the University of Arkansas and an associate certified coach through International Coach Federation, a whole person certified coach, and a trauma-informed certified coach. All the things, as well as a certified positive psychology coach and a trained facilitator for Tara Moore's Play Big coaching program. So Ashley has all the certifications. You don't have to worry about it. She's got your best interests at heart when you work with her. She's a specialist for Doctors for Dancers, a blog contributor for the one and only Apollo Performance as well. You can also see her on tour with Embody Dance Conference, which she is in the thick of it right now, as we all are with competition season. And at Embody, she leads mindset skills seminars for all ages, including parents and teachers, because we all need it. Thank you so much for being with us, Ashley.
Thank you all for having me. I'm excited to be back.
So Ashley, you work with performing artists all over the country, like we just said, through in a number of different ways. What are some of the reoccurring themes that you have seen this season so far when it comes to focusing on mental health in performance athletes?
Ooh, a lot of what we're talking about today has been very relevant. Validation, internal and external validation. At Embody Orlando a couple weekends ago, I actually did this topic for all of the dancers as well as the parents. And that was really interesting to hear their feedback. And the dancers were so incredibly insightful about how external validation is affecting them, what the costs are of being attached to that external validation is. So I would say that's really a big one right now. And then we've also been working on, as I work with dancers all the time, self-compassion, the mental strength of how to navigate feedback and criticism in the dance space. Those have also been really big this season too.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So, exploring this topic in particular, I feel like there's no limit to who this can affect, right? Everybody deals with internal, external validation. I think starting with young all the way up to full-grown adult performing artists. And so, to dive right in, what is the basic difference? We like to start with the basic level foundation between internal and external validation for performance athletes, and how do those dynamics differ between various performing arts disciplines? So you've got dance and music and theater and marching arts. Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So internal validation is recognition and affirmation from within yourself. So internal, inside yourself. Then external is that recognition and validation from outside of yourself. So that could be from teachers, parents, coaches, friends, peers, social media, anything that is giving you that recognition. And as you said, Bree, it is such a human experience. External validation is. And so, whether you are a dancer or a singer or a theater or whatever performing arts, you are going to have external validation in your life. Us as humans, all of us are going to have external validation. I think it really changes on the environment that you're in and the culture of that environment, and also what the measures of success are. So like competitive dance, it's I think in competitive things in general, you are going to, where somebody is like being scored and ranked, there is going to be that extra added layer of external validation because it is such an emphasis and there's such a focus on it.
When we talk, okay, it might sound like a silly question, but when we talk about validation, can validation be positive or negative, or validation is positive and then you have factors that kind of tear at that validation?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So, and I want to note the difference too. So in this context today, I'm not really speaking about emotional validation and supporting that way, because that is incredibly important, right? Like we want to validate our students' feelings and experiences. We want to say, I hear you, this is hard, I understand, we really want to validate their feelings. Where it gets sticky is when that recognition, so things like praise and awards and scholarships and which line you're dancing in and which featured parts you have, when that is starting to be the driving force in the dancer's motivation and what they are seeking, and that they're changing parts of themselves to get that recognition and to get that approval. And so that's where it starts to get sticky.
When it becomes the focal point of what they're doing, instead of, hey, I love this, I want to do this, and I love the validation that I get from it. When it becomes the driving force behind what they're doing, that's when the red flags go up.
Yeah, exactly. And I always tell dancers, like, it is okay for external validation to feel normal. I mean, to feel good. That's normal. Like, it's going to feel good. It's going to feel, that's totally normal for it to feel good. That's okay. The goal is not to like avoid it or not care about it. The goal is for it to not be your motivating factor and to not be what you tie your self-worth to, right? Because if we're building our self-worth and our self-concept about other people's opinions and other people's recognition of us, that's going to shatter when we don't get that recognition.
Because inevitably, like, people, it's subjective. People are going to have different opinions.
So subjective.
And that's the whole issue, right? Is that you've got these judges and there are 3 people out of a billions of people that are giving their opinion, and it is an opinion.
Yes, and that came up when I was talking to the dancers at Embody last weekend about why we were having a group discussion about why external validation is so easy for dancers to get attached to. And that was one of the things that came up, is because it's so subjective. Like, they're looking to that to be like, oh, okay, I am good enough. I did do what I was supposed to do. I did, and so because it's so subjective, and there's not like, it's not like other sports where it's, a little bit less subjective.
Right.
So yeah, I think that definitely adds to it.
Yeah. I'm sitting here like trying to jump in. I feel like I'm jumping rope, like, because I just have so many questions. I have just found that it is so hard to untangle in these, and it's gotten harder. I don't remember this with the kids here. I go, old fogey, before the social medias. It has gotten so much worse to untangle and unmesh the need for external validation from judges and competitions in competitive spaces, and get these kids to still work hard. Like, they won't, unless you tie it to a consequence that you're going to lose, or you're not going to place, or you're going to have bad critique. They're kind of like,
yeah.
And I just don't know how to do that. I know we're probably, but
no, you're so right. I think, as you said, social media is a really big factor in this. And then also, you're so right, because the external has become such a big part. And competition dance has grown so much in the last 10, 15 years, that it is such an emphasis and it's such a focus that it can be really hard. But I think as we go on, we'll probably talk about some strategies that can help us untangle from that.
Now, do you think that the need with that, because this is the whole big debate about competitive dance between like conservatory dancers and competitive dancers, like there's no artistry in it. Do you think that this external validation and this need for it that we kind of built into the competitive industry compromises their artistic integrity? and authenticity?
I think it definitely can.
Okay.
I think it definitely can. And I think we need to be really mindful of the environments that we're in and where the focus is. But I do think if there is this focus on winning, 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 and fitting into this box of winning dances, right? Like I'm going to choreograph this dance because I know it's going to win well, and it's going to do XYZ. Like I understand that. Like I can intellectually understand that, but I do think that at that point it does start to lose some of the artistry. And then also too, it's going to whatever we as teachers put our focus on, we are modeling that for the kids, right? So if they see us focusing on the outcome and the winning, they're going to see that too. And right, artistry is, I mean, you have to take risks and you have to make mistakes to be an artist. Like that's just part of artistry and growing and learning, right? And so if there is a culture where that is not acceptable, I definitely think that one of the costs of that is artistry.
I think in competitive dance specifically, I mean, I'm sure it's this way in all, like when you're in a competitive program, it's a lot harder for a kid to even have their own artistry and perspective and point of view because they're being coached and they're being choreographed. It's more about the artistry of the choreographer and the artistry of the director and how they want to take that. And so, and this, there are exceptions, right? I can name so many programs in the country that are doing really great work at working on honing and crafting, helping students find that voice of their own. Yeah. But it's already so hard to find that as a young dancer. I almost think it's really almost next to impossible to develop your own perspective until you get out of studio dance, because you're influenced so heavily and told what to do and told what to change, and you don't have the ability to step back and go, I don't believe I want to change this. I want to keep this here because this feels good to me, or I'm doing this for this reason. Like you don't really have that ability. So I think it's interesting. And then, you know, as they're developing what little freedom they have and finding that voice, you've got social media and you've got, you know, all these other layers that we really didn't necessarily have at that age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It complicates it to the nth degree. And I think, you know, another show just popped into my head, so I'm going to say it out loud and you can let us know in the comments if you're interested in this. Like, I wonder if we need to start having the conversation around competitive dancing becoming its own genre, period. Like, competitive dance, and I hate to say artistic dance because it's all artistic, but is there, I guess maybe are there tracks that focus specifically on the artistry and some that specifically focus on compulsory skills and execution of different things versus
because I do think like the competitions are very different too in what they value. Like if you go to a certain competition convention, you know, over here, and then you go to a competition over here, like the emphasis on artistry is going to be far more in one than it may be in another. And so I think that's really important to recognize too, is having that standardization across, you know, the competitive community if we're going to keep this format, because it is really, really hard to know, you know, if you're a studio that's going to focus heavily on artistry and developing that, do you want to go to a competition that's going to penalize you for that straight out the gate and pay all that money?
Right.
And the competitions may not even know they're penalizing people. Like, I think it's just how the judging panel flows with who they hired for that weekend. Right. So there's a lot to consider there.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're just now joining us, we are talking to Ashley Mowry about how do internal and external validation affect performing artists. We've gotten into a great conversation so far. If you want to catch it from the beginning, you can go back and watch this full episode on YouTube at TP Dance Creations or at Apollo Performance. But there's still a lot of show left, so make sure you stick with us, share, like, subscribe, call a friend, tell them to log on now and watch. We would love to have you. We also want to know what you think, so please drop your comments and thoughts in the comment section below. My question I want to get to, are there instances where external validation is necessary for professional growth. And because there are some students that I know they thrive on it. Like if you are not the teacher telling them you did well, like they're kind of lost out in the woods. Like they don't know what to do. So are there instances where that is necessary? And if there are, how do you navigate that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, such a good question. So what's coming to mind for me is, again, what I was saying about like it feeling good, external validation feeling good is not bad. Like that's okay. That's so normal. We're human. Like we crave that belonging, right? And so to keep that in mind, that it's okay that it feels good. And then again, we just don't want to become attached to it. So we have to remain focused on our why we're doing this, why we're showing up, why we're working so hard, why we love to dance, what our bigger role in the dance community is, right? That's going to propel us. And then we also, too, for those kiddos that we do find like need that external validation, we want to really, I go back to Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset. She's the psychologist and researcher that coined the terms.
You've mentioned her before. Yeah.
Yes. And I go back to her work. And when we are giving praise, like when we have that student that we know needs that external validation, we really, as Carol Dweck says, we really want to focus our praise on the process that is getting them there. So we want to focus the praise on their work ethic, their strategies, how they're showing up, their perseverance, their resilience, and the process that is getting them to where they are going to be, instead of just the outcome and their talents.
Mm-hmm. Ashley, can you retrain an athlete, a performance athlete, or more specifically a child, to think differently, like to require, like those that require more external validation or perform better with more external validation? Can you retrain their brain to work through and get to a different process?
Yeah, absolutely. So our brain has neuroplasticity, so it can change and shift. It takes intentional practice, right? And it also it depends on the environment. So let's say I'm doing one-on-one coaching with a kid. And we're trying to get them to shift from that reliance on external validation to internal, and also focusing on the process and focusing on their why. We're going to work on that a lot in session, but it's also the other factors that are outside of session are going to influence them, right? So like how parents and guardians treat them, what their emphasis is, the studio that they go to, how their teachers praise them, how their teachers talk to them, right? So yes, absolutely. Is it possible? 100%, but it is going to have to be more than just in session.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. It has to be part of the practice, part of their routine. Okay.
Right. So can external criticism hinder internal validation? Like, so can getting inappropriate or too much external criticism or feedback, or maybe inappropriate external criticism or feedback, impact internal validation? And if it can hurt it, how do you make these performance artists resilient so that they can bounce back from that?
Yeah. So absolutely, criticism can absolutely impact your the internal validation that you give yourself. We know that our inner critics, so that inner dialogue that is critical of ourselves, is influenced by criticism that we receive. So our inner critic takes that criticism and amplifies it, and that's what becomes our inner dialogue. So we definitely know that it does. So that's why when we're teaching, especially with younger ones, we want to be really careful that our criticism and feedback is constructive and healthy, and not, as you said, inappropriate, right? Like we want to really be mindful about how we're criticizing and giving constructive criticism. How we can help dancers be resilient in that is, one of the ways is there's a couple ways. So number one, in coaching, we work a lot on shifting how we look at focus and reframing how we look at focus, reframing how we look at feedback. So we're going to look at feedback as information, and specifically information about the person giving it, right? Because if I'm in class with Bree and she's correcting me, those corrections are very influenced by Bree's training, Bree's education, Bree's personality, Bree's past, they're very influenced that. So I can look at that as like, okay, this is information about Bree and what the level of teaching that they're bringing to me, and how can I use that to better myself and better my craft, right? So that's one way, is looking at feedback as information about the person giving it. The next thing that I do with dancers too, to build that resilience, is to develop a practice of self-compassion. And I know last year we did a Beyond the Steps on self-compassion. And so, I recommend checking that out to any teachers who are interested in that. But in the most basic sense, self-compassion is the understanding that we can treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would treat somebody that we love. So when we get that negative feedback, we can say, oof, that hurt. That stings. And that's okay that it stings, right? Part of the human experience is those hurts and those mistakes and those failures, right? And so really recognizing those, normalizing those for ourselves, and then saying kind words to ourselves.
Got it. Got it. So we touched on a little bit earlier, social media. How has the landscape of external validation changed for performing artists in general? And what impact does it have on the mental well-being of the artists and athletes that we're seeing today?
Yeah, I think it's really increased the pressure and increased the reliance on external validation, right? Between likes and followers and views and all the things, shares, it really puts another layer to that external validation. And I also see it, I think especially in the dance space, I see it as another way too, where kids start to lose their authenticity in order to get that approval.
And what's so funny is that, like, we have an e-com company, obviously, and being on the other side of it and understanding, that there's this whole machine behind the social media platforms that have nothing to do with the content that's pushed out. It's the algorithms. It's the, it's kind of how the platform chooses to push out videos. And so from a kid's perspective, I posted this video and didn't get as many likes and follows and shares as so-and-so, but that a lot of that is so not in our control either, and I don't know that children or people that aren't paying attention every day to the back end of social media understand that is a thing. Like, I know my parents are on social media and they get served things all the time, and we'll say like, well, did you see that? Well, where did you get this from? Because they don't necessarily understand that they're being served that for a very specific reason. And it doesn't mean that it's true, and doesn't mean that it's, there's some back end formula that is not tied to a human being that said, oh, like, you're going to like this, so we're sending it to you. It doesn't mean that it's so popular that it got sent to you. It means that a computer chose to send it to you. Right. Like, that's bare bones. That's what it is, and we, I can understand that, right? But I'm still human, and I still have emotions and insecurities and feelings. And so I can't imagine then you put that in the hands of a child, in the mind of a child, what that does.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think too, that's another, I fully support parents making the decisions that they feel are best for their kids in social media, but also like, their prefrontal cortex is not developed. Like, this is an added stress or an added pressure for them when they don't have the cognitive abilities to be able to separate it yet.
Oh God. And we're at home now having these conversations with my 8-year-old and my 11-year-old about phones and social media. And I'm like, y'all are not.
You can barely like sit still to eat food like
for a long time. Like, you guys, and they don't understand why, because they've got friends at school that they have it and they do it and they this and they, and I'm like, that's great. But like, we love you. We're not trying to we're not
Right.
trying to hurt you. We just want to keep you safe. And I think there are kids that maybe can handle it. I just know mine are not at that point yet.
Mhm. And you have to know based on the
You have to
child.
know your child. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. So for those just joining, this is Beyond the Steps. I'm Bree Zabrowski here with Melissa McDaniel Grisham. We're chatting with our friend Ashley Mowry today about how internal and external validation affect performing artists. We have had a fantastic conversation. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe at Apollo Performance and TP Dance Creations. Go back and watch all of our episodes. They're fantastic, season 1 through 4. You can find them on those platforms, and keep watching because we still have a lot left. Ashley, how do mentorship and guidance from other experienced artists and veterans in the business contribute to development of internal and external validation for those artists that are up and coming?
Yeah. So when I think of mentorship, I think it's really, and we're talking to teachers here mostly. And so I think it's a good reminder that like good mentors should really be encouraging the mentee to self-reflect and to build self-trust and to have independent decision making. Like we're as mentors helping them build those skills, right? So I think a good mentor is one that encourages those things and doesn't just give their feedback and give their opinion. And so I think that's something to consider. Like if you are in the mentoring position or you're guiding dancers or students or performance athletes, what is your role in that, and how can you help develop that artist to trust themselves and to listen to themselves and to create that autonomy within themselves. And then, as I was saying, for teachers too, like when we are praising them, really praise the process, praise their work ethic, praise the things that are getting them to where they want to be.
Yeah. Thank you. And let's shift focus, because cultural differences play a part too. Like, how do cultural differences influence the pursuit of internal versus external validation on more of a global scale? I know, performing arts is huge all over the world. And is it affected, the way that you seek validation, is it affected by cultural beliefs?
Yeah, absolutely. Our culture, the things that your culture values are going to influence your external validation or what you want. So whatever the emphasis of the culture is or where the values are in the culture. So if it is success, if success is measured in a certain way, or if approval is like, if you in the culture, parental approval is valued, right? These things are going to absolutely affect what we seek. So it's really like, again, and you can think about it like on a global scale, right? Like the different cultures of like different communities, and then also like on a micro scale, like the culture of your dance studio in that way too. And so whatever is valued is going to affect how we seek external validation.
I would also imagine that, like, I guess the socioeconomic conditions that you come from probably are very specifically in performance athletes that can, well, no, that's any athlete actually, where, if you're coming from a place where you're trying to make money doing this,
Absolutely.
you're trying to make a living, you may have a family to support. You may not have come from a place where your family can necessarily support you through it. And so external validation from a standpoint of, you're going to give me a job. You think I'm good enough to book this gig. You think I'm good enough to make this team. You think I'm good enough to be drafted. Like those types of things being tied to your livelihood and how you're going to live have to be hugely stressful. And it's kind of like, I gotta depend on this person's opinion, because if I don't live.
Right.
That's a great point. So are there there are situations where you may have to rely more heavily on external validation for what you do to survive, right? So like, then how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think like in a capitalist society, which we are in, that is going to be a factor, right? Like it's so tied in, and especially like if you are a professional making money, it's absolutely tied in. I would say like my biggest encouragement would be to also simultaneously try to keep that purpose and that why alive within you, right? Like, yes, you need those jobs. Yes, you need it to live. And that is so real and so valid. And then also, like, what part of yourself, like, why are you doing it for yourself? You've got to keep that alive as well.
Even
Mhm.
if it is, I need to support my family.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
why,
Yep.
but then, is there a line that can get blurred with your integrity and all of that if you're, you know, so desperate to, this is my why, I will do anything to do that, right? Like,
Mhm.
then are
Yeah.
you compromising your values and integrity there,
Right,
So,
right. I think you have to have a clear understanding of your values, right? Like, if one of your values is like providing for your family or providing for yourself, like, I think that is totally real and absolutely okay. And again, like in capitalism, that's what we have to do, because we have to make money to survive. And so I think that it's then really watching that your worth, your self identity, and your self worth are not tied up in those
gotta-
things. Like, even, and we see that a lot, right? Like in it getting tied up in wealth and money and making money. And so again, it's that practice of having self-compassion for yourself and giving yourself that internal validation that, like, I am enough, I am worthy with these things and without these things.
Mhm. Absolutely.
gotta
Absolutely. So we've kind of talked a little bit about what the dangers are of really focusing on external validation. I don't know that we've really gotten into. I would imagine that there's probably mental illness that can be, or mental challenges that can be developed, like depression or anxiety or things like that. But are there dangers of being relying too heavily on internal validation as well? Like, is there a need? Is there a balance where it's like, you know what, I need to have a focus on external validation somewhat?
Yeah, I think definitely, like, I think as humans we are going to just naturally have that balance, like, or not have that balance, but have both happening, and it's up to us to find the balance that is healthy for us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And again, like, internal validation is just simply like, I am worthy, I am enough, I can handle this, and believing those things and trusting yourself in those situations. And so, and giving yourself that validation. So I do think that it is such an important component. I do think that there has to be a balance. And again, like, external validation is going to feel good, but where it gets sticky, where it turns into anxiety, depression, burnout, pressure, is when you start building your self-worth on that, right? Like, I'm only worthy because I've won Miss
Mm-hmm.
Star Power or whatever, or that's my whole self-worth is built on other people's opinions and other people telling me that I'm good. I also have to believe that for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because
And I
otherwise
think
I'm gonna.
honestly, yeah, that's the mental warfare. And we've talked about that on the show before. Like, when you grow up in the fishbowl of your little, area, and you be your top dog, and you're competitive. So you have all these awards and accolades and solo, acknowledgments and things like that. And then you say, okay, well, I want to go and do this professionally. And you move
Mhm.
out to where you're now in an ocean of people that all have that same experience. And you really, like, I know for me, moving out to LA, I really had to strip myself completely down and
Mhm.
rebuild my entire, the way that I moved, the way that I danced, the way that I thought of myself, the way I saw myself. And there were times I questioned, like, I don't know if this is for me. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I want to wear this to that audition, and I don't
Yeah.
know if I get this job that I'm comfortable doing this thing. And
Mm-hmm.
you really have to start completely over, and it is scary, and it is very lonely, and it's something you really have to work through. And
Mhm.
that's why, when you talk about those professional, New York, LA, like, you see the glamorous success stories on social media of the people that did it, and like the 1% of the people that, climbed to the top of that mountain. But there are so many people who just go, I 6 months and I'm out because I don't know how to deal with all of this.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you grew up in that environment where you were so tied to that external validation, and then you moved to LA, New York, and you're not getting it,
It's so hard to unwind. Yeah.
It's so hard. So, and that's another reason why I think teachers, we can prepare our dancers better if we can start at a younger age, helping them develop their own sense of self and their own internal validation. And then when we're giving that external validation, really making it about the process, because that's going to teach them, right? Like, so I work with dancers and teachers a lot on making process-oriented goals instead of outcome-oriented goals. Because that's what's going to keep them in their longevity. That's what's going to keep their career going, right? Like, we don't have control if I'm going to win first place overall at this competition. And I also don't have control if I'm going to book this job, right?
Yeah.
What I do have control in is like my work ethic and what I'm going to do and the classes that I'm taking and how I'm showing up. So we as teachers can really do a lot to help our dancers if we start that at a younger age and really help them develop their sense of autonomy too, right? Like that they believe that they have a say in it, and that they believe that they have a say in their career and what happens next.
Yeah, it's so tough, and it's in so many ways contradictory to the way that it's all set up right now. So it's so interesting to explore that. But I do want to point out for anyone that's watching, like, this is not dance. This is not marching arts. This is not music or theater or sports. This is life. And this is a skill that if we can get kids to be more aware of this sooner in their youth, they can go out in the world and we maybe not see as many mental health issues and anxiety and depression and suicide rates and all the things that we see because the pressure is just too much, right? So this is a great skill in general.
Absolutely.
I also want to, just for teachers, because I was thinking about it as you were talking, Ashley, kind of talk about the difference between a reward system and an external validation system. Like, I don't want teachers to go out and be like, okay, I can no longer give stickers at the end of my, Tiny Steppers class because, that's external validation. Like, there's a difference between a reward system, right, and and giving external validation too early.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even reward systems, we're seeing some kind of in the public school systems, like how reward systems are maybe not the best way to go. And so, I always advise like the stickers and stuff. Like, I feel like it is like you came to class. Here's your sticker for the littles, because it is like it's part of the experience, and then really helping them from that young age understand like they have to develop that intrinsic motivation, and that's going to help them not be so attached to that external validation, right? So they have to want to be there for themselves. They can't want to be there for the sticker. And it's interesting. So I've been thinking two things while we were talking about motivation. One is, we talked about autonomy and how like our system is like just not set up for dancers to have a lot of autonomy, especially like younger comp dancers. And it's interesting because in psychology, self-determination theory is a theory developed by psychologists Deci and Ryan, and they go over they identified 3 components that help support intrinsic motivation. So 3 things that we need to feel most intrinsically motivated, and one of those things is autonomy. So when we give that autonomy, or when we allow space for that autonomy in dancers, so what are your goals? Where do you want to go with this? What do you want to do with this? Right. And it's all age appropriate, right? Like it's, as they get older, it has to, grow a little bit more. But it is one of those factors that is going to help them feel more intrinsically motivated. So that's important to remember.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Great point. So if you are just now joining us, we have had an amazing conversation with Ashley Mowry around external versus internal validation, how we can better navigate that, how we can understand it, and how we can make sure that there's a good balance with our performance athletes who are out there. We're about to wrap this show, but don't worry, you haven't missed out totally. You can go back and watch this show from the beginning on YouTube at Apollo Performance or at TP Dance Creations. It is all there. Make sure you subscribe so that you can get that little notification that shows you when we go live again, so you don't miss our next show. Make sure that you share, tag someone who might be interested in this conversation, and let us know what you think by dropping your thoughts in the comments. It is time for homework. Bree.
Yes, we love homework on the show. We give it every single week. So Ashley, you know the drill. What is one thing you want our listeners to do and an action to take between now and next week to help sort of rev up that process of finding their internal versus external validation?
Yeah. So I want every teacher to self-reflect on their relationship to external validation. And I have some questions that you can use if you just want to think through them, or I am always encouraging written self-reflection, just get your thoughts out. But some questions to ask yourself is, one, when do you seek external validation? Where do you notice yourself seeking it? Two, what are the costs of seeking that? Are you changing yourself? Are you losing authenticity? Are you not aligning with your values? What are the costs of it? And then how does that affect your beliefs about yourself and your behaviors in your life? And then the last thing, what would you like to focus on instead? So instead of trying to seek that external validation, where else would you like to put your focus? What are the other measures of success that you can use within yourself?
Love that. And by teachers doing this, if you're an educator, then you're going to inevitably understand a little bit better and be able to translate that to your students.
Yeah. I think part B would be like having this conversation with your students, right? And talking to them about external versus internal validation, what it means, and asking them like, what external validation do they find themselves attached to?
That might be a good, journal exercise for, we talked about journaling, and hopefully people are putting that into practice.
Yeah.
But that journaling exercise we do, during each week of our dance training or whatever training you're doing out there, that would be a good topic. So
yeah, absolutely.
Do that. All right. Ashley has given your homework. You have to do that, but you also have to take our STEPS initiative course. This was the catalyst for this podcast. It is still available for free to you and anybody else that wants to take it. Melissa is going to throw that link up, or she already has. So you can click that link, go and take the course for free. It's an online digital course series that's going to tackle all of the topics we talk about on the show and give you sort of a general foundation, educational information and resources that you can use to expand on your journey of knowledge and hopefully put into practice so that we're all happier, healthier individuals from the inside out, head to toe. Again, that's the STEPS initiative course, and you can take it completely free. Go at your own pace. It's super great. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And then Ashley, tell everybody out there, I know we've done this before, but to keep telling the people how they can get a hold of you, because I think you're just so necessary for our industry.
Thank you. Yeah. So my website is ashleymowry.com. You can find me on Instagram at ashley.mowry.mindset. My email is ashley@ashleymowry.com. So please reach out if you have any questions. I do one-on-one coaching with students and teachers. I also do virtual and in-person studio workshops for teams and companies. And then you can also catch me at Embody. I'm at 3 more cities this season. I'll be in New Jersey, Denver, and Rhode Island. So you can catch me in those cities too. And I'll be doing mindset skills seminars for each age group in all of those cities.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley, for being here with us. We just absolutely love having you every single time. Back. Thank you, Bree, for hanging out with me and doing this show with me for 4 whole years. I can't believe it, how long it has actually been. Thank you for all the viewers who hang out with us on a weekly basis and like and share and subscribe. We love you and you're the reason that we do it. So please do more of that. We are going to be back next week with another great show, right 3:30 Eastern time on YouTube at Apollo Performance and at TP Dance Creations. In the meantime, go back and watch this episode as well as others. They are all there for you from season 1 all the way up to right now in season 4. If you have a topic or if you want to be a guest, let us know. You can DM us at TP Dance Creations or at Apollo Performance or at info@apolloperformance.com. That's the correct email address, right, Bree?
Yes.
Yes. Like, yes. Both of us blanked out on that one, but yes, you can email us there. If you think you have something that you want to talk about or you have a topic that you really love, please reach out to us. We are looking for new topics and new guests for the remainder of the season. Until next time, continue your journey beyond the steps. We will see you next Friday.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.